So the first step here is to factor all of these fractions. So the first fraction, the numerator and denominator have binomial factors. In the numerator, what factors of -6 have an overall sum of -1? -3 and a +2. Okay, what about the denominator? We're looking for factors of -15 whose sum is a +2. That is -3, +5. Go to our next fraction. We have the difference of squares, so that's going to factor into the sum and difference of the terms being squared, which is x and 5. So sum times the difference. The denominator, again, has binomial factors. First terms of x, the two factors of -5 whose sum is -4, -5 and a +1. Now I'm going to write this next one in a slightly different color just so I can identify it later. Here I'm going to invert and multiply. So I'm changing this from division into multiplication. So I'm going to take the denominator and factor it up in the numerator here. So x squared minus 1 is the difference of squares, so it factors into the sum and difference of the terms that are being squared, which are x and 1. And then the original numerator gets moved to the denominator, and I factor it. The two factors of +6, whose sum is +5, are +3 and +2. Okay. Now you're going to see these a lot, these types of problems here and here, because the factors of 6, if they're 3 and 2 or 5 and 1, they can be pretty similar, and there can be common mistakes on those. So just be really careful with that. All right, so that's step one. Rewrite everything as a multiplication and factor. Now we can cancel common factors. So here we have x minus 3's canceling, x plus 2's cancel, x plus 5's cancel, x minus 5 cancels, x plus 1 cancels. So everything gets canceled out with the exception of x minus 1 in the numerator, x plus 3 in the denominator. So here's my simplified fraction. Okay, now what I have to do is identify the domain restrictions that got canceled out through this process. So when I look at this, I have a factor of 3, -5, +5, -1, -2. Okay, so those are my domain restrictions. And if you enter this, it's still going to show up as incorrect. Okay, the reason for that is this part right here. Anytime you divide by something where you invert and multiply, you need to take a look at that every factor in that entire fraction. No factor, whether it's top or bottom, can ever equal 0. Because if this factor any factor here equaled 0, you'd get division by 0 of this fraction. If any factor, when we inverted it, equals 0, then you'd get division by the whole quantity 0, which again can't happen. So when we look at restrictions on this, we also have to look at the restriction identified here. X minus 1 tells us that x cannot equal 1. That has to be included in as one of your domain restrictions. And so when we look at our total answer, writing it from smallest to largest, we have -5, we have -2, -1, we have 1, we have 3, and we have 5. So it's going to be all of those possibilities.